Welcome to Chapter 4, titled Your Body and Wellness. So the idea behind this chapter is that we are in charge of both our physical and psychological health. And so in this chapter, we're going to look at how our diet, exercise, body image, spirituality, and self-image affect our well-being. And we're going to kind of learn how to take responsibility for how well we are. So the chapter objectives are to put wellness in the context of making life choices, to provide an overview of sound health practices, to challenge you to make decisions about your health and wellness, to encourage you to evaluate your thoughts and feelings about your body identity, and finally to understand the effects social media and different forms of entertainment have on our body image. So what we're going to be talking about in this chapter really stems from what's called the holistic approach to health. And it's based on the assumption that the mind and body are an integral unit that cannot be separated. They're one thing. The mind affects the body affects the mind, and they work interactively. And we can't really treat one but not treat the other. So we have to treat the whole person when we're dealing in medicine or in wellness or in health, rather than just looking at the symptoms of a problem. Because wellness is really more than just the absence of illness, right? If a person is going to thrive and be healthy in every aspect of the word, then it isn't just that they don't have a runny nose. It's that they're really at their best. So the holistic approach focuses on the whole person. And so holistic health comes from the holistic approach. And when we're talking about kind of the responsibility between a doctor and the patient, holistic health says that they share the responsibility for health decisions, and holistic health focuses on all facets of human functioning. So yes, physical health, but also psychological, social, intellectual, and even spiritual health. So traditional medicine really focuses on curing illnesses, but holistic medicine or holistic health focuses on all facets of human functioning. And so the patient and doctor kind of work together to promote health as well as prevent and cure illness, where traditional medicine just kind of treats the symptoms. So wellness is an active process consisting of conscious choices we make in fashioning a healthy lifestyle. And so just as there are many degrees of an illness, like you can have, stage 4 cancer or stage 1 cancer, there are many degrees of wellness. So you can be really well or a little well. So it's kind of up to you to decide where you're at in the wellness process. So the wellness process involves identifying personal goals, prioritizing these goals and values, making an action plan, and making a commitment to follow through on these plans. So hopefully this chapter will provide you with some insight on kind of how to gauge where you're at in the wellness process, and to see if you want to make any improvements to how well you are. Okay, so let's watch an interview with Deepak Chopra, who is a doctor, and he uses the holistic approach to treat his patients. So he'll kind of explain how he uses it in his practice.
Your recent book, Quantum Healing, is filled with the mystery, wonder, and hope of men and women who have experienced seemingly miraculous recoveries from cancer and other serious illnesses. As a respected New England endocrinologist, educated in Western medical methods, you began your real search for answers when you saw patients in your own practice completely recover after being given, by responsible estimates, only months to live. How do you approach serious cases such as cancer, heart disease, and AIDS?
Well, the way I approach anybody else, I look at not so much the disease, but the person who has the disease. It's all right to know what the disease is. In fact, it's important to know what the disease is. Much more important to know this person who has the disease. A person is the end product of all their experiences. I would say they're the end product or metabolic end product of all their experiences. Experiences are through the five senses of sound, touch, taste, smell, sight, etc. These literally shape the texture, the rhythm, the form of our mind. And our mind ultimately projects itself as the body. We have the most exquisite pharmacy in the body that makes all kinds of drugs. Yes. Tranquilizers, antibiotics, anti-cancer drugs, yes. Heart pills, antihypertensives, you name it, the body makes it. Makes it at the right time, precise dosage, for the right target organ, no side effects, it's free, and all the instructions are in the packaging. So what I do with my patients is activate and amplify their own healing response. You say miraculous recoveries from cancer. Well, really, that's yesterday's miracle. It's today's science. The fact is that all of us are miraculously recovering from cancer every day. We turn over 500 billion cells a day. A small percentage of these are mutations. So we have cancer cells in our body all the time. But the vast majority of us don't get cancer because we make the appropriate drugs inside us. These are called interleukins, interferons, etc. We make them all the time, and we are all the time recovering from cancer because we have cancer cells inside us. Amplify that a little bit and you have a quotes-unquote miracle. That's yesterday's miracle, it's today's science. You can activate this pharmacy inside through a variety of techniques. And I use transcendental meditation, primordial sound, music therapy, aromatherapy, a form of massage therapy that activates healing substances from the skin. I use group dynamics of consciousness, use herbs to activate the pharmacy inside, understand people as psychophysiological entities, modulate their diet so that it's appropriate for their body type, restore their biological rhythms. There's a wide variety of methods. But it is true, we treat patients with heart disease, we can get them off their usual medications and restore, in fact, blood flow to the heart and even reverse it. There's published data on that. It is also true that many cancers do go spontaneously into regressions. You can amplify that. And it is also true that many people have HIV disease, the AIDS virus, but they don't have the expression of the disease. In fact, I have many patients with AIDS who are healthier than most of the people walking down the street. They haven't had a cold in 5 years. The basic premise is that we have a healing system inside us, and it can be amplified through a variety of non-pharmacological, non-materialistic approaches.
That's very interesting.
Okay, so some of the rewards for wellness and having a healthy lifestyle are improved cardiovascular efficiency, increased muscular tone, strength, flexibility, and endurance, reduced risk for injuries, improved sense of self-control, self-efficacy, and self-esteem, improved management and control of stress, improved outlook on life, improved relationships, and then decreased death and illness from infection and decreased likelihood of chronic diseases. So those rewards sound pretty good to me. I'm in. Okay, so 60 to 90% of reported health problems are not effectively treated with pharmaceuticals or surgery, and this is really because the health problems themselves are stress related or are derived from a lack of self-care, which stems from a lack of healthy mind-body interaction. So we need to pay attention to how our body feels and respond accordingly. And we need to pay attention to how our mind is interacting with our body and vice versa. When we don't meet our emotional and spiritual needs, we really set ourselves up for illness. Feelings of emptiness and depression are known to be common precursors for cancer, according to recent studies. And self-help books and videos for stress management, exercise, meditation, diet. I mean, there's so many of them. Nutrition, weight control, control of smoking, drinking, and drugs. They're all available to us. And so we really are in control of how long and how well we live. And we can seek out tools like those self-help books and videos. There's a lot of great documentaries on healthy living, meditation, diet, things like that. And we just have to keep in mind that sometimes we have to suspend short-term pleasures, the cigarette now, or the fifth shot of tequila now, for the payoff that we'll get in the long run, the healthier life, the feeling better, things like that. So Bernie Siegel is a physician that was one of the front runners in the holistic health movement, and he is a leading physician that talks about emotional and spiritual needs. So let's watch a video about on Bernie Siegel talking about these ideas of wellness and responsible choices.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bernie Siegel, and I'm not a normal doctor. The lines that literally transformed me, and I wish I could find this woman. She had breast cancer, a young woman, one of my patients. She sat next to me. She said, Bernie, you're a nice guy. I feel better when I'm in the office with you, but I can't take you home with me. So I need to know how to live between office visits. I learned that if you help people to live, wonderful things happen. They didn't die when they were supposed to. And then you begin to see it's scientific, to feel good about your life, and how people, when they transform their life, whether you call it rebirthing, born again, or anything else, and they began to enjoy the life they were living, some miraculous things also happened. As Solzhenitsyn said, self-induced healing occurred. When I finally wrote a book, when somebody said to me, do you ever think of writing a book? I thought, yeah, it saved me running around talking so much. That also changed my life. And that's a big part of where eventually I did leave surgery, because the audience was changing. As healthcare professionals began to listen, I had a chance to change, the care of more patients than if I stayed in my office. It's, again, like talking to 100 medical students. If I can change their attitude, think of all the people who will be helped, versus if I sat in my office instead of talking to them. Many years ago, the American Holistic Medical Association started. We were all, they're a bunch of quacks doing crazy things. But, the people who joined were not. They were doctors who saw that there was more to healing, really the whole picture, not just here's a prescription, here's a pill, have an operation, but let's look at the whole picture. So everything was brought in, and that's what made it holistic. Watkins Books, a store in London, did a survey of living spiritual healers, the top 100 in the world today. And I was number 20 in a year or so ago. That was quite a pleasant shock to me, to realize that in the entire world, I was 20th on the list. So you realize how the ripples go out. In one of my meditations, I asked from nature, that has all the answers, how can I travel less and still help people? And the message was, look what a flower does. It spreads its seeds. It doesn't go anywhere. It spreads its seeds. So let me help you learn how to deal with the difficulties. What does that do? It gives your body a message that can induce healing. And I love the term self-induced healing. It's not about spontaneity and miracles. It's about self-induced. So give your body the message. It's all scientific. Your genes don't decide. They get a message, and then they perform. So give them live messages, and let me and my channel help you to find that way.
So we want to start accepting responsibility for our bodies, and one of the things that we can do is choose our physicians wisely. It seems to me that patients are more interested in getting pills for symptoms rather than changing their stressful lifestyle or changing the behaviors they're doing that are harmful to their bodies. And so we want to have physicians that are also kind of psychology based. They're also oriented in looking at the whole person and what's going on in your mind, not just the symptoms of your body. And so physicians that are psychologically oriented emphasize the role of choice and responsibility in our well-being. They're not just quick to give medicine, but they challenge patients to look at their habits. They ask you questions about your lifestyle, about your exercise, about relationships. Do you have friends? Any spiritual practices you do? Things like that, just to get a feel for how you're living your day-to-day life, and is it sedentary, is it isolated, is there drug use, what types of things are affecting your mind, which ultimately can be affecting your body, or vice versa. And so there are herbal remedies and there are synthetic remedies, and they often share the same active ingredients as prescription drugs. Not all herbal remedies are approved by the FDA, and the effectiveness of herbal remedies are not really well documented. So it's important that we're careful when we look at herbal or synthetic remedies, and that we talk to our doctors about them and make sure that they are a healthy choice, because a lot of people think if it says herbal on it, that it's a product that is like natural or organic or healthy for us, but that's not always the case. Okay, so we're going to watch a video now on a doctor talking about the idea that maybe we can cure ourselves or help ourselves to heal without drugs or pharmaceuticals, and just with kind of the power of positive thought and having a healthy mind, and some of those ideas we've been talking about so far that might seem kind of far-fetched or a little esoteric. So I thought we should look at the science behind it and see if these ideas have any validity scientifically.
Can the mind really heal the body? And if so, is there any scientific evidence to convince skeptical physicians like me? These are the questions that fueled the last few years of my research. And what I discovered is that the scientific community, the medical establishment, has been proving for over 50 years that the mind can heal the body. We call it the placebo effect. And we've been trying to outsmart it for decades. The placebo effect is a thorn in the side of the medical establishment. It's an inconvenient truth that gets in between trying to bring new treatments, new surgeries into the medical establishment. So it's a problem, supposedly. But I actually think this is really good news. The placebo effect is excellent news because it's concrete evidence that the body holds within it innate self-repair mechanisms that can make unthinkable things happen to the body. So if you find this surprising, if you have a hard time believing that the body can heal itself, you need look no further than the Spontaneous Remission Project, a database compiled by the Institute of Noetic Sciences of over 3,500 case studies in the medical literature of patients who have gotten better from seemingly incurable illnesses. You think there's such a thing as an incurable illness? I swear, if you go look at this database, it'll blow your mind. Everything's in there. Stage 4 cancers that disappeared without treatment. HIV-positive patients that became HIV negative. Heart disease, kidney failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, thyroid disease, autoimmune diseases, gone. A great example of this in the medical literature is a case study from 1957 of Mr. Wright, who had advanced lymphosarcoma. So things weren't going well for Mr. Wright. Time was really running out. He had tumors the size of oranges in his armpits, his neck, his chest, his abdomen. His liver and his spleen were enlarged, and his lungs were filling up with 2 quarts of milky fluid every day that had to be drained in order for him to breathe. But Mr. Wright wasn't giving up hope. He had heard about this wonder drug called Krebiozin, and he was begging his doctor, come on, just give me some of that Krebiozin, it's all going to be good. Now, unfortunately, the Krebiozin was only available on a research protocol, and the protocol required that the doctor be able to make an assessment that says that this guy has at least 3 months to live. And his doctor, Dr. West, just couldn't do that. But Mr. Wright was tenacious, and he didn't give up. He kept badgering his doctor until finally his doctor was like, okay, fine, I'll give you the Krebbiozin. So he dosed him up on a Friday, not expecting that Mr. Wright would make it through the weekend. But to his utter shock, when Dr. West came in to do rounds on Monday, Mr. Wright was up walking around the wards, and his tumors had shrunk to half their original size. They had melted like snowballs on a hot stove, and 10 days after getting the Krebbiozin, they were gone. So Mr. Wright was up rocking and rolling, like praising Krebbiozin as the miracle drug he believed it to be for 2 months, until the initial reports came out about Krebbiozin that said that it didn't really look like Krebbiozin was working so well. And Mr. Wright fell into a deep depression, and his cancer came back. So this time, Dr. West decided to get sneaky, and he told his patient that, you know, that Krebbiozin that you got, that was a tainted version, really not so good. But I got us some ultra-pure, highly concentrated Krebbiozin. This stuff's got it going on. He then injected Mr. Wright with nothing but distilled water. And once again, the tumors disappeared. The fluid in his lungs went away. Mr. Wright was up rocking and rolling for another 2 months. And then the American Medical Association blew it by publishing a nationwide study that proved definitively Krebbiozin was worthless. 2 days later, Mr. Wright, after hearing this news, died. Soon after that, I came across another study in the medical literature that was the stuff of fairy tales. 3 baby girls were born, delivered by a midwife on Friday the 13th in the Okefenokee Swamp near the Georgia-Florida border. And the midwife pronounced that these 3 babies born on such a fateful day were all hexed. The first, she said, would die before her 16th birthday. The second, before her 21st. The third, before her 23rd birthday. And as it turned out, the first girl died the day before her 16th birthday. The second died the day before her 21st birthday. And the third girl, who knew what had happened to the other 2, got wind of that. On the day before her 23rd birthday, she showed up at the hospital hyperventilating, begging them to make sure she survived. She wound up dying that night. So these 2 case studies are great examples from the medical literature of the placebo effect and its opposite, the nocebo effect. So Mr. Wright, when he got that distilled water and his tumors melted away, that's a great example of the placebo effect, when you get a seemingly inert treatment, and yet something is happening physiologically in the body such that disease goes away. The nocebo effect is the opposite. So the 3 hexed girls are an example of the nocebo effect, when the mind's belief that something bad is going to happen in the body then comes to manifest. So the scientific literature, the medical journals like the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association, these scientific journals are full of evidence that the placebo effect and the nocebo effect are incredibly powerful. We've known this since the 1950s, and we've seen countless case studies that show that in almost everything you study, if you give people a fake treatment, a sugar pill, a saline injection, or most effectively, a fake surgery, 18 to 80% of the time, people get better. And it's not just in their mind. That's what I thought in the beginning, like, oh, they're just feeling better, they're thinking better. But it's not, it's actually in their physiology. This is measurable. You can actually see what happens to the body. So, for example, patients getting placebos were found to have ulcers that healed, colons that became less inflamed, bronchi that dilated, warts that disappeared. Cells looked different under the microscope. It's provable. It's happening in the body, even though it's initiated by the mind. So when you look at these, some of the studies are just amazing. I love the Rogaine study. So, you get a bunch of bald men, you give them placebos, they grow hair. The opposite is also true. So if you give people a placebo and you tell them it's chemotherapy, they vomit and they lose their hair. So this is really happening in the body. And the question that I had is it just the mind's positive belief that's making this happen? Not according to Harvard researcher Ted Kaptchuk. According to him, he thinks that the most essential part is actually the nurturing care of a healthcare provider, more so even than the mind's positive belief. That some of the studies actually say the doctor is the placebo, or can be. So Ted Kaptchuk wanted to study this, and he did a great study looking at patients that were getting placebos for an illness, for treatment of an illness, and he told them, you're getting a placebo. There's nothing in here, inert ingredients, nothing active. They still got better. Most likely, Kaptchuk postulated, because they felt tended, nurtured. They felt like they were doing something. They felt like somebody cared. So to say that you can heal yourself is sort of a misnomer. You know, the body can heal itself. The body has these innate natural self-repair mechanisms. But the scientific data proves that you need the tending, nurturing care of a healthcare provider of some sort, of a healer, to facilitate that process. It's not an easy process to go through alone. So it makes a big difference if somebody else is holding that positive belief with you. But the problem is, while the doctor can be the placebo, the doctor can also be the nocebo. So what patients need from us as healthcare providers, they need us to be forces of healing, not forces of fear or pessimism. So every time your doctor tells you you have an incurable illness, you're going to have to take that medication for the rest of your life. Or God forbid you get cancer and they say you've got a 5% 5-year survival rate. It's really no different than when that midwife told those 3 baby girls that they were hexed. It's a form of medical hexing that's so prevalent. As doctors, we think we're being realistic. You know, we're giving people the kind of information we think they need to know, but we actually can be harming them. Instead, we need to be more like Dr. West. You know, taking that distilled water, really, Mr. Right, I promise, this is going to do it for you. But do we have to count on our doctors to dupe us? You know, do we have to get fake surgeries and fake drugs and wind up in clinical trials? This is what led the next phase of my research. So in my last TEDx talk, I talked about a new wellness model that I developed called the Whole Health Cairn. And this came about as part of my research, trying to find how else can we harness this mind's power that's clearly evidenced by the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. Can we do something without being in a clinical trial? And my hypothesis was that in order to heal ourselves, in order to be optimally healthy, we need more than just a good diet, a regular exercise program, getting enough sleep, taking your vitamins, following your doctor's orders. Those things are all great and critical and important. But I also came to believe that we need healthy relationships, a healthy professional life, a healthy creative life, a healthy spiritual life, a healthy sex life, a healthy financial life, a healthy environment. In essence, we need a healthy mind. So I wanted to try to prove this, and I went into the medical literature, and the copious data that I found proving that all of those things are essential really blew my mind. I compiled them all into my upcoming book, Mind Over Medicine, Scientific Proof You Can Heal Yourself. But I want to give you a few highlights about what this is all about. So you can see from the Whole Health Cairn that all of these facets are built upon a foundation stone that I call your inner pilot light. And for me, that's that essential, authentic part of you that knows what's true for you, that's willing to tell you the truth about maybe what's out of alignment in your life, what stones in your Whole Health Cairn might be out of balance. And as you see, I've put the body, physical health, on the top of the Whole Health Cairn because it's the most fragile, the most precarious, and the most easy to kind of fall out of balance if other things in your life aren't going so well. So what I found in the medical data is that relationships matter. People who have a strong social network have half the rate of heart disease compared to those who are lonely. Married people are twice as likely to live long lives than unmarried people. In fact, curing your loneliness may be the most important measure of prevention you can enact upon your body, more so than quitting smoking or starting to exercise. Your spiritual life matters. Those who attend religious services live up to 14 years longer. Your professional life matters. You really can work yourself to death. In Japan, they call it karoshi, death by overwork. And people who survive, the survivors of those who die of karoshi can actually apply for workman's comp-like benefits in Japan. But it's not just Japan, it's actually happening even more in the United States. We just don't get benefits here. So they did one study and they found that people who fail to take their vacation are actually a third more likely to get heart disease. Your attitude really matters. Happy people live 7 to 10 years longer than unhappy people. And optimists are 77% less likely to get heart disease than pessimists. So how does this happen? What's happening in the brain that's making the body change? This was what was fascinating to me. What I found is that the brain communicates with all the cells in the body via hormones and neurotransmitters. So for example, if you have a negative thought, belief, or feeling in the brain, Your brain triggers this as a threat. Something's wrong. If you feel lonely or pessimistic, things are bad at work, you're in a toxic relationship, the amygdala says threat, threat, threat. And it turns on the hypothalamus that talks to the pituitary gland, that communicates with the adrenal gland, and the adrenal gland starts spitting out stress hormones like cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine. It turns on what Walter Cannon at Harvard called the stress response that triggers the sympathetic nervous system and puts you into that fight or flight mode, which is adaptive, it's protective if you're running away from a mountain lion, But in everyday life, you're supposed to have that quick stress response if there's a threat, and then it's supposed to switch right off. This isn't what happens in our regular lives these days. But fortunately, there's a counterbalancing relaxation response that Herbert Benson at Harvard described. And when this comes about, the stress response turns off, the parasympathetic nervous system turns on, and healing hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, nitric oxide, endorphins fill the body and bathe every cell in the body. What I found the most amazing about this is that those natural self-repair mechanisms that we all have, they only flip on when the nervous system is relaxed. So when you're having stress responses, that all those natural self-repair mechanisms get flipped off. The body's too busy trying to fight or flee in order to heal itself. So when you think about this, you have to start to wonder, how can I possibly start to change the balance in my own body? So one study showed that on average, we have more than 50 stress responses per day. And if you're lonely or depressed or pessimistic or unhappy at work or in a miserable relationship, that number is going to be more than twice as many. Now, the relaxation response is what researchers think explains the placebo effect. So when you're going to get supposedly maybe a new wonder drug, you don't know whether you're getting the placebo or not, it triggers that relaxation response, that combination of the mind's positive belief and the nurturing care of a healthcare provider relaxes the nervous system. And then all those natural self-repair mechanisms can come into play. Fortunately, though, you don't have to be in a clinical trial to turn on your relaxation responses. There are lots of simple, pleasurable activities that turn on the relaxation responses, and these have been proven in the medical literature. So you can meditate. You can express yourself creatively. You can get a massage, do yoga or Tai Chi. You can go out with your friends. You can do work that you love. You can have sex. You can laugh. You can exercise. You can play with animals. So I ask you to consider the whole health cairn in your own life. Which stones in your whole health cairn might be out of balance? Each of these stones can be a factor for creating stress responses or relaxation responses. How might you turn on more relaxation responses in your body? And most importantly, what does your body need in order to heal? What prescription do you need to write for yourself? And are you going to be brave enough to take action on the truth of what your inner pilot light already knows? I believe our system, our healthcare system, is badly broken, and it's largely because we've lost respect for the body's ability to heal itself. The medical establishment has gotten arrogant. We've come to think that with all of our modern technology and all that we've learned in the past century, that we've mastered nature. And we find it repelling to think that maybe nature could be better than we are sometimes. And yet, spontaneous remissions from incurable diseases are proof that sometimes nature's just better than we are. It's a narcissistic wound for physicians. We don't know what to do with that. It makes us feel helpless and hopeless and useless. But fortunately, we're needed. The physician and all the other healthcare providers are absolutely essential to this process. We need to embrace this. And patients need to change their outlooks on this as well. It's not just doctors. We need patients to stop thinking that your body is not your business, taking your power and handing it over to other healthcare providers. Your body is your business, and your mind has tremendous power to communicate with your body such that your body can heal itself. So I once had a dream, and in my dream, I was standing there looking at these mountainsides full of millions of people that were standing shoulder to shoulder, and they were all facing due north, dressed in all these tribal garbs, beautiful colors, covering the mountainsides like a quilt. And there was a bright, streaming light on their face, and everyone was facing this light. And that's what I think of when I think of healthcare. I think of all of us standing up and facing the light. So please stand with me for a moment. It's going to take all of us. Just because things have gotten bad doesn't mean they can't get better. I believe that just like there are no incurable illnesses, there are no incurable systems. But it's going to take all of us needing to open our heart and open our minds and bring care back to healthcare. So please hold hands with your fellow neighbor and let's just set the intention right here that things are going to be different from now on, that we can start this grassroots effort, that it all starts with you. Be the love that you want to see in healthcare. And I believe miracles can happen. As we do this, you're releasing oxytocin, dopamine. You start to heal yourself. And as we do so, we can heal healthcare. Thank you.
Okay, for lecture activity 1 for chapter 4, I would like for you to just kind of give me a reaction to the video. What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? Do you think that it is possible to kind of heal symptoms of illness by having a spiritual basis or a positive outlook? In other words, do you kind of believe in the power of the mind and that mind-body connection that we've been talking about? And it's okay if you don't. In our culture, it's not necessarily a widely accepted idea, but I'd like to just kind of get your thoughts on where you're at right now with some of these ideas and your reaction to the video. So just give me 3 to 4 sentences at minimum on your reaction to the video, agree, disagree, and or your thoughts on the mind-body interaction overall, and if you think it's valid. We're going to talk now about that wellness process, starting with this idea of REDS, which is the formula for success. So the R in REDS stands for rest. And so we're going to talk now about sleep and why we need it and how it helps us and what happens if we don't get it. So sleep is a requirement of normal human functioning, obviously. There have been studies done where they deprive rats of sleep, and many of the rats ultimately die within 2 weeks. And their explanation for why we need sleep is based on this idea of circadian rhythms. So our bodies have these biological cycles that we go through. Some rhythms, like our heartbeat, are within seconds. Some are monthly, like for females, menstruation. But we also have a circadian rhythm for a sleep-wake cycle that happens daily that our body must go through to function. And when psychologists do research on sleep and they deprive rats of sleep, they'll do this by putting rats on treadmills, like little tiny rat treadmills over water, because rats hate water. And so they just turn the treadmill on and the little rat starts running, and they run for a long time. And if they fall asleep because they get tired or exhausted, they fall in the water and they wake up. So in an effort to not fall in the water, they would just like run on the treadmill, and kind of as they would slide to the back of the treadmill just before falling off, they'd wake up. But when we studied their brains, what we would see is that as they were kind of sliding to the back of the treadmill as they were getting tired, they were slipping into these micro sleeps, these brief side steps into sleep that were only lasting a few seconds, because the body basically will force us to go to sleep, but our conscious mind can override that, which was what was happening with those rats. So why do we sleep? The leading theory is called the restorative theory of sleep, and it's to conserve energy for the day. Researchers suggest that the reduced activity of the brain actually allows our brain neurons to repair. So if you look at your brain cells or your neurons under a microscope throughout the day, they actually start to wear down. They look kind of tattered or worn, like an old pair of jeans. And when we sleep, our brains stop the release of these neurotransmitters called monoamines, and this allows receptor cells to rest and be more sensitive when we're awake, and it allows those neurons to repair. So let's watch a video now on why we sleep.
In 1965, 17-year-old high school student Randy Garner stayed awake for 264 hours. That's 11 days to see how he'd cope without sleep. On the second day, his eyes stopped focusing. Next, he lost the ability to identify objects by touch. By day 3, Garner was moody and uncoordinated. At the end of the experiment, he was struggling to concentrate, had trouble with short-term memory, became paranoid, and started hallucinating. Although Garner recovered without long-term psychological or physical damage, for others, losing shut-eye can result in hormonal imbalance, illness, and in extreme cases, death. We're only beginning to understand why we sleep to begin with, but we do know it's essential. Adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and adolescents need about 10. We grow sleepy due to signals from our body telling our brain we are tired, and signals from the environment telling us it's dark outside. The rise in sleep-inducing chemicals like adenosine and melatonin send us into a light doze that grows deeper, making our breathing and heart rate slow down and our muscles relax. This non-REM sleep is when DNA is repaired and our bodies replenish themselves for the day ahead. In the United States, it's estimated that 30% of adults and 66% of adolescents are regularly sleep deprived. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. Staying awake can cause serious bodily harm. When we lose sleep, learning, memory, mood, and reaction time are affected. Sleeplessness may also cause inflammation, hallucinations, high blood pressure, and it's even been linked to diabetes and obesity. In 2014, a devoted soccer fan died after staying awake for 48 hours to watch the World Cup. While his untimely death was due to a stroke, studies show that chronically sleeping fewer than 6 hours a night increases stroke risk by 4.5 times compared to those getting a consistent 7 to 8 hours of shut-eye. For a handful of people on the planet who carry a rare inherited genetic mutation, sleeplessness is a daily reality. This condition, known as fatal familial insomnia, places the body in a nightmarish state of wakefulness, forbidding it from entering the sanctuary of sleep. Within months or years, this progressively worsening condition leads to dementia and death. How can sleep deprivation cause such immense suffering? Scientists think the answer lies with the accumulation of waste products in the brain. During our waking hours, our cells are busy using up our day's energy sources, which get broken down into various byproducts, including adenosine. As adenosine builds up, it increases the urge to sleep, also known as sleep pressure. In fact, caffeine works by blocking adenosine's receptor pathways. Other waste products also build up in the brain, and if they're not cleared away, they collectively overload the brain and are thought to lead to the many negative symptoms of sleep deprivation. So, what's happening in our brain when we sleep to prevent this? Scientists found something called the glymphatic system, a cleanup mechanism that removes this buildup and is much more active when we're asleep. It works by using cerebrospinal fluid to flush away toxic byproducts that accumulate between cells. Lymphatic vessels, which serve as pathways for immune cells, have recently been discovered in the brain, and they may also play a role in clearing out the brain's daily waste products. While scientists continue exploring the restorative mechanisms behind sleep, we can be sure that slipping into slumber is a necessity if we want to maintain our health and our sanity.
So, as the video pointed out, one of the things that could happen if we don't get adequate sleep is what's called sleep deprivation, which can result in moodiness, continuing tiredness, difficulty in concentrating, and falling asleep at inopportune times, like while attending class or at work. It also increases our vulnerability to be emotionally upset and leaves us susceptible to stress. And stress, in turn, can be really bad for our bodies. So how much sleep do we need? It varies from person to person. 7 to 8 hours is average, but I mean, there's some people that only need 3 hours and they function just fine. What's really important, researchers say, is the quality of your sleep. It's even more important than the quality of your sleep. So, staying up late to finish things and waking up to an alarm clock, for example, is not necessarily a good quality of sleep. An ideal quality of sleep would be one where you wake up, you go to bed at the same time, and you wake up at the same time every day. And you do this naturally without the assistance of an alarm clock. When you sleep, it's uninterrupted, would be another sign of good quality sleep. So that's what's kind of meant by that. Even if you only get 5 or 6 hours of sleep, if it's really good sleep, that's kind of more important than the length of time. And then additionally, when we sleep well, we go through all the stages of sleep, including REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep, which is the stage of sleep in which we dream. And there's a lot of evidence that dreaming is really good for us. And so we're going to watch a video on why we dream and a little bit of theory on what our dreams mean. But overall, dreaming does act as kind of a distraction from the stresses of our day, which is something that our mind really craves and needs, and kind of then manifests itself in our physical bodies in a positive way. Or if we don't get dreams, if we're not able to dream, then our stress levels might not be lowered, and that would negatively impact our bodies. But anyways, let's watch the video on dreams.
In the 3rd millennium BCE, Mesopotamian kings recorded and interpreted their dreams on wax tablets. 1,000 years later, ancient Egyptians wrote a dream book listing over 100 common dreams and their meanings. And in the years since, we haven't paused in our quest to understand why we dream. So, after a great deal of scientific research, technological advancement, and persistence, we still don't have any definite answers, but we have some interesting theories. We dream to fulfill our wishes. In the early 1900s, Sigmund Freud proposed that while all of our dreams, including our nightmares, are a collection of images from our daily conscious lives, they also have symbolic meanings, which relate to the fulfillment of our subconscious wishes. Freud theorized that everything we remember when we wake up from a dream is a symbolic representation of our unconscious primitive thoughts, urges, and desires. Freud believed that by analyzing those remembered elements, the unconscious content would be revealed to our conscious mind, and psychological issues stemming from its repression could be addressed and resolved. We dream to remember. To increase performance on certain mental tasks, sleep is good, but dreaming while sleeping is better. In 2010, researchers found that subjects were much better at getting through a complex 3D maze if they had napped and dreamed of the maze prior to their second attempt. In fact, they were up to 10 times better at it than those who only thought of the maze while awake between attempts, and those who napped but did not dream about the maze. Researchers theorize that certain memory processes can happen only when we are asleep, and our dreams are a signal that these processes are taking place. We dream to forget. There are about 10,000 trillion neural connections within the architecture of your brain. They are created by everything you think and everything you do. A 1983 neurobiological theory of dreaming called reverse learning holds that while sleeping, and mainly during REM sleep cycles, your neocortex reviews these neural connections and dumps the unnecessary ones. Without this unlearning process, which results in your dreams, your brain could be overrun by useless connections, and parasitic thoughts could disrupt the necessary thinking you need to do while you're awake. We dream to keep our brains working. The continual activation theory proposes that your dreams result from your brain's need to constantly consolidate and create long-term memories in order to function properly. So when external input falls below a certain level, like when you're asleep, your brain automatically triggers the generation of data from its memory storages, which appear to you in the form of the thoughts and feelings you experience in your dreams. In other words, your dreams might be a random screensaver your brain turns on so it doesn't completely shut down. We dream to rehearse. Dreams involving dangerous and threatening situations are very common, and the primitive instinct rehearsal theory holds that the content of a dream is significant to its purpose. Whether it's an anxiety-filled night of being chased through the woods by a bear or fighting off a ninja in a dark alley, these dreams allow you to practice your fight or flight instincts and keep them sharp and dependable in case you'll need them in real life. But it doesn't always have to be unpleasant. For instance, dreams about your attractive neighbor could actually give your reproductive instinct some practice too. We dream to heal. Stress neurotransmitters in the brain are much less active during the REM stage of sleep, even during dreams of traumatic experiences, leading some researchers to theorize that one purpose of dreaming is to take the edge off painful experiences to allow for psychological healing. Reviewing traumatic events in your dreams with less mental stress may grant you a clearer perspective and an enhanced ability to process them in psychologically healthy ways. People with certain mood disorders and PTSD often have difficulty sleeping, leading some scientists to believe that lack of dreaming may be a contributing factor to their illnesses. We dream to solve problems. Unconstrained by reality and the rules of conventional logic, in your dreams, your mind can create limitless scenarios to help you grasp problems and formulate solutions that you may not consider while awake. John Steinbeck called it the committee of sleep, and research has demonstrated the effectiveness of dreaming on problem solving. It's also how renowned chemist August Kekule discovered the structure of the benzene molecule, and it's the reason that sometimes the best solution for a problem is to sleep on it. And those are just a few of the more prominent theories. As technology increases our capability for understanding the brain, it's possible that one day we will discover the definitive reason for them. But until that time arrives, we'll just have to keep on dreaming.
All right, the next letter in our acronym for the formula for success is E for exercise. About 75% of adults in America are sedentary, though, meaning they don't exercise at all. So, a sedentary lifestyle is especially dangerous because it greatly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, colon cancer, depression, anxiety, and the list goes on. So, it's important that we do move our bodies not only for our physical health, but also for our mental health. For example, when we do exercise, it is a natural stress reducer because it increases the endorphins in the brain. And it provides distraction from stress, reduces anxiety, tension. It improves sleeping and work efficiency. And the physical health benefits are obviously endless. Some of the main ones are that it prevents disease and can prolong life. So, exercise is really a key component for wellness. And one of the best exercises that we can do is actually walking. And you can do this just without really setting aside specific time to do it. You can just slowly start walking in more to your daily routine. And so maybe you could park farther away than you usually park, walk shorter, and then walk short driving distances instead of driving. So if you just have to run to the store, which is around the corner, then just walk it. You could take the long route at the mall, or instead of taking an elevator, take stairs. So there's little things that we can do just to take more steps. There's a lot of programs and apps out there right now promoting 10,000 steps a day. So ideally, we could set aside 30 to 40 minutes, 5 to 7 days per week, and focus on exercise. But if not, we can just make these little changes to our life just to get more steps in and more movement in each day. All right, and the next thing that we should focus on to have success in wellness is our diet. So some of the reasons or factors that affect how we eat when we eat, why we eat, our social factors, cultural factors, and emotional factors. So some of the social factors that affect how much we eat are the idea that in our society, if someone offers a dessert or something they've cooked for us, we feel obligated to eat it, that it's almost rude if we don't. And then also, we've been taught to eat at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so we're on this eating schedule, which makes us think that we need to eat at certain times, even though we may not actually be hungry. So it's important that we actually listen to our bodies on when we're hungry and when we're not. And then cultural factors affect things like what we eat and portion size. So in the USA, we have really big portions relative to other cultures. You actually only need to eat about the size of your palm at each meal, at least as far as protein goes. And what we eat in our country is a lot of sugar-based foods and fast foods and junk foods. And then emotional factors also affect what we eat and when we eat. Many people tend to eat when they're upset, and this could be a learned behavior because when we were, babies and we'd cry, our parents would give us milk or food to kind of calm us. And also, food is a good way to kind of distract yourself from your problems. Not good as in healthy, but good as in effective. So when you're eating, it's a temporary distraction, which is one way that some people handle their stress. It's called emotional eating. So our diet affects our long-term health more than any other factor within our control. Like, we can't always control the air we breathe if it's polluted or filled with smog. We can't necessarily escape the stresses of life, but we can control our diet. So food gives us the energy that we need to cope, to exercise, to work, etc. And so we need to really try to develop regular and consistent eating patterns, just like we need to try to develop those patterns with sleep. The thing is that diet kind of has a negative connotation. So we're going to try to use the word nutrition instead. It sounds a little more positive. Nutrition is our food consumption and the processes involved by which we use the nutrients required for growth and survival. So we want to eat nutritious, control our portions, don't eat to fill a void, but food should be pleasurable. So don't eat food that tastes gross just because it's healthy. If you decide healthy food is gross, it's probably not going to be something that you're going to eat in the long term. So find food that's good for you, that tastes good for you also, so that you can enjoy eating. Okay, let's watch a video on why our brains like junk food so much.
Carrots or French fries? How are you feeling about this choice? Be honest. Really, which would you rather eat? That's what I thought. Humans love fat and carbohydrates. Why? Because they have a lot of energy in them, and energy is what we need to do all of the stuff that we humans do. But we're omnivores. We can get our energy from meat, grains, vegetables, nuts, tubers, fruit. We're extremely versatile animals compared to like a cow, which is pretty much stuck eating grass, or a lion, which has no business eating anything other than raw meat. So if we can get calories from a bunch of different kinds of food, why, at a very basic level, do we really just want to eat fats and carbs? Well, it has a lot to do, apparently, with our evolutionary history. Let's start with a member of my extended family, Grandma Australopithecus. This pretty lady was a direct ancestor of the first member of the genus Homo. She was different than us in a lot of ways. Her brain was 35% the size of ours, her stomach was a lot bigger, and her teeth were larger, flatter, and duller. All of this leads us to the conclusion that Australopithecus ate mostly fruits, vegetables, and tubers. The raw fruits and vegetables, especially before the agricultural revolution, weren't very high in calories. And if that's all you're eating, it takes a big, patient digestive system to process them. So if your body's working really hard all day to squeeze every last calorie out of your not very energy-rich food, something's gotta give, and for Australopithecus, it meant having, kind of a tiny brain, because brains require lots of calories. It wasn't until Australopithecus' direct descendant Homo habilis came along 2 million years ago, about the time Australopithecus went extinct actually, that we start seeing smaller, more efficient gut, smaller teeth, and a brain about 50% bigger than Australopithecus. These clues, coupled with the fact that this is around when habilis began to control fire, suggests that they were able to cook. And that means they were suddenly able to eat meat without worrying about dying of nasty festering meat disease, and they were suddenly able to unlock all sorts of hidden delicious energy from the vegetables that are pretty stingy when they're raw. So since then, every species in the genus Homo, from habilis to Homo sapiens, have had larger and larger brains, thanks in part to increasingly high energy diets. These huge brains of ours are expensive, and we've needed a bunch of fat and calories for them to evolve, not to mention just to maintain them. So because our brains are not stupid, they've evolved to love the living crap out of high energy food. And now look at us, we can eat a donut hamburger whenever we want to because we're the kings of the frickin' earth. And our brains, they're like, yeah! In fact, some studies have revealed that eating high-fat food not only activates our brain's pleasure centers, it also activates the touch centers. So our brains respond to eating fatty, high-calorie foods the same way we respond to hugs from our moms. Literally comfort food. But even though our brains are totally plump, the grocery stores are now packed full of sweet, sweet Snickers bars, the rest of our bodies are like, I'm so tired of dealing with all of this nougat, help us! Which is why, even though a carrot doesn't look as good, you should eat it. Your body will thank you. Thank you for watching the Triple Philip Fry Show. If you have any questions or ideas or comments or thoughts for us, please leave them down below or on Facebook or Twitter. And if you want to continue getting smarter with us, go to youtube.com/scishow and subscribe. This episode brought to you by nutritious things, not by fries, just to be clear.
And the last component to our formula for success is spirituality. Spirituality has many different meanings. Our book defines it as our relationship to the universe and an avenue for finding meaning and purpose in living. There is a lot of research that shows that people that are spiritual are happier. So being spiritual really involves letting go of external noise and stressors and connecting with your inner self, being self-aware, being aware of how you feel inside. So this is really the key to wellness. Just as we feed, listen, are aware of our body, we need to do the same thing for our mind in order to have that mind-body balance. And some common practices to increase our spirituality is to sit in quiet self-reflection, meditate, write, paint, do good for others, gratitude, acts of kindness, prayer, chanting, depending on kind of what you believe in or what feels good to you. And so there is a difference between spirituality and religion. Religion is a set of beliefs that connects an individual to a higher power or a God. And they can be the same as spirituality, religion, or religious beliefs, or different depending on your beliefs. Generally, religion indicates a faith in a higher power or a God. Almost all religions focus on love of God, neighbor, and self. The Dalai Lama delineates between religion and spirituality really well. He says that spirituality is a concern with qualities of the human spirit and others, such as compassion, love, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, contentment, a sense of responsibility, and harmony. Whereas religion is concerned with faith-based tradition, acceptance of supernatural reality like heaven and angels, includes dogma, rituals, and prayer. So one of the spiritualists that many members of my family like to listen to and read books by is this guy named Ram Dass. His birth name is Richard Alpert, and he'll kind of talk about why he changed his name to Ram Dass in this video that I'm going to show you. But I'd like to introduce you to him if you've never heard of him. And, you know, you don't have to like it or anything, but I think his ideas and his messages are kind of, they span like a broad range, and it's not particular to any one religion. It's very different than religion in that it's talking about kind of, he talks about kind of the meaning of why we're here and what we should be doing while we're here to feed our spiritual selves and things like that. So check it out. See what you think. This is Ram Dass. He used to be a psychologist, very famous one, named Richard Alpert. He's best known for the psychedelic the Harvard psychedelic experiments. If you've heard of those, there's a book about it and he worked with Timothy Leary, who some of you may have heard of. But anyways, here he is, Ram Dass.
For the last in this series, I'm talking to a man who has achieved a remarkable synthesis between the modern culture of the West and the most ancient culture of the East. He is what, though he wouldn't call himself one, many people would call a guru. He's the author of books like Be Here Now and Grist for the Mill. He's Baba Ram Dass. You don't really look like anybody called Ram Dass. Tell me who you were and how you got where you are.
I was born, given the name Richard. My last name was Alpert, and I grew up in the United States, in Boston. Went on to study psychology, took a PhD, taught at Harvard for some years. Got involved in the early 60s in research with psychedelic chemicals, such as LSD. Researched these for 5 or 6 years. Then went to India, where I met a spiritual teacher and realized in India that they had maps for the types of things that we were thinking we were the first explorers on the earth. They already had maps about this terrain of consciousness. And at that time I was given the name Ram Dass, which means servant of God. Ram is one of the names of God, and Das means servant. And I came back from India and became somewhat of a yogic teacher, I guess. And the name Ram Dass was useful to me because every time somebody calls you servant of God, it reminds you about what your business is about, which Richard didn't really do.
No, okay.
So even though all of the trappings of Ram Dass are now gone, the Indian clothes and the beads, and I'm not any more a Hindu than I am a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jew or a Islam.
Would you care to say then, in that context, what you are? You're not those things, or in a sense perhaps you're all of them?
I think in every one of them is living spirit, and I think I am completely hooked on living spirit and that which truth brings you to. And at the highest or most esoteric essence of each of the religions is that same truth. And I am very much attached to spirit, not particularly to religious forms.
Did you went to India and you met the spiritual teacher of whom you spoke. Would you say it was correct to say you had a conversion of any kind?
Well, you know, what seems like critical moments in a life, when you look back later, you see that there was a lot of preparation in your being for that. I'm sure that the first time I understood the scientific method, it was an opening for me. I'm sure the first time I took psychedelics, it was very definitely an opening for me. I'm sure the time I met the teacher, it was a very clear opening for me, because I saw in him the possibilities that I had dreamed that human beings were capable of.
How far, then, do you feel that all that was in some way, somewhere, preordained for you? That there's a path that your feet have been set upon?
Well, I don't know whether the word preordained is exactly the right word. It seems to me that the entire universe of forms is lawful in its unfolding, and that it is not by chance that each event occurs. I don't know that it is determined at some distant past moment. It merely is a set of lawful interactions, and if you could stand back far enough, you could see and predict the way it would work in time and space. So I have adopted the role, similar to the Tibetan Milarepa, of sort of listening to the universe to hear the part I play, rather than thinking that I am so much of a choosing instrument.
Are we all on that path?
Yes. Yes, this is the evolution. I mean, the ultimate understanding that I have now is that we have taken a human birth in order to have a series of experiences which are vehicles for our awakening out of the illusion that we are only separate, exclusively separate. Right?
Separate from what?
Separate from the totality of form, or what might be called God, or the formless that lies behind form. The One, it could be called the One. And it seems to me that the journey of awakening leads one to go from thinking that the reality that you grew up with, where your parents said, settle down to reality, this is real, gives way to understanding that that's only relatively real, that there are many types of realities, not only cross-cultural, but planes of awareness as well. And that you go from the identity with your own separateness, which is true on one plane, like at this plane, you're Bernard and I'm Ramdas. Then we go up another one in which we can look and we can see, at one level we can see your body and my body, that's one plane of reality. We could flip our channels, see another plane where we see your personality and mine. Now we're in the psychological domain. We could flip another channel in which we could determine that your astral identity, you could be an Aries or I'm an Aries, you might be Leo, Sagittarius or whatever, another matrix of individual difference. We flip the channel once more, and when I look into your eyes, I see another human being just like me, but in a different package, all right? And then all the individual differences become packaging. These are planes of consciousness. If I flip it once more and look into your eyes, it is myself looking at myself looking at myself. There's only one of us in drag, making believe we are the many, if you will, all right? And the complete cycle is going from the many into the one, and then coming back into the many to delight in the forms of individual difference, not to reject the physical plane by any means. But that's the cycle of awakening, as far as I understand.
Well, what happens when we get to the channel, to use your metaphor, which, to vary it, hits the jackpot? What comes up on the machine? What are we looking for? What's the ultimate end? What's at the end of the rainbow?
Well, you see, at that point you have transcended time and space, so there is no beginning and there is no end, so the entire image is really a faulty one. You realize at that moment, all right? So that's part of it. You have transcended time and space. You have transcended any attachment to a separate identity, even though you still enjoy the separateness as you will, all right? You have become experience. You've transcended dualism, the separation between subject and object, so that at that moment you are the river or you are the tree. You are one with the universe, and it is beyond even the experience of cosmic consciousness, which is a lower trance state, actually. You've actually transcended that one. And at that point there is no self-consciousness. You are merely part of the Tao, of the flow of things in the universe.
But if we are part of the universe, all of us, all the time, how come we have to become that thing? I mean, what's happened? You talked about us being separate from it. Why should we be separate from it?
Well, this is the question of how did it all begin?
All right,
why is there form? Begin? Why, about the apple, original sin, which metaphor do you want to use? Was it merely the one of us creating the many in order to come to know itself, because there was no way a one could experience itself? So it plays with dualism, because as you awaken out of dualism, you realize that the entire thing was like a dream or a dance or an illusion. Not meaning, it's not pejorative to say that. It merely means that it didn't have the solidity you thought it did. So in one answer, Buddha's answer is, it's none of your business. Meaning that the rational mind can never comprehend the system that created it. In other words, a system can't understand a system meta to it, which is merely a logical problem.
Well, the way you put it, it sounds as though your one, your totality, your God, and these are only labels, we're agreed, I'm sure, has, so to speak, set us a task. Is that what you believe?
Well, first of all, it's not anything separate from us. So we have set us a task, and we could call it a game of hide and seek. We could call it, but you see the predicament. If you look at the wheel of births and deaths, in which you go from the one into the many, and then awaken back into the one, and then stand back from that wheel outside of time and space, you see that there is nothing happening. There is no beginning and there's no end. It's merely, if you look at a clock, that at some point you think you are at 5:25. You think that's who you are. But actually, if you stood back, you would see that you are the Buddha, you are the first cell separating, and you are also the holy man at the last moment of enlightenment. They're all right there. All the incarnations are always present every moment.
But then are we just going round and round and round?
Yes. Nothing's happening at all, actually.
Well, that sounds a trifle pointless. But you don't clearly, look at you, you don't think that's pointless.
Well, the experience of going round has the point in it. The totality just is. God just is. God isn't going anywhere. It always was, is, and will be. And there is, in a way, it is only when you understand that it's pointless that it gets interesting. Okay? We are always clinging to what's the meaning of this?
Yes.
How important is this?
Yes.
But maybe it isn't that important. Maybe it has the exquisite beauty of being, as Hermann Hesse says in Journey to the East, Leo says, it's a beautiful dance, it's a beautiful game, an exquisite game, a play. In India it's called Leela, the play, the dance.
But how can human beings abandon that concept of meaning? I mean, that is surely the whole structure of everything we stand on. The floor will fall in if we abandon that, won't it?
But it's after the floor falls in, and after you have transcended, thinking of yourself as somebody going somewhere. I mean, if I were to define what I am, I'd say I'm in training, in nobody training. I'm in training to become nobody special, which is, it's understood in the Zen image of nobody special. And then out of that, you come back into the play. You do it as Don Juan says in the Castaneda's books, you live and you huff and puff as if it had tremendous meaning. You appear as if it does, but yet it doesn't.
Aren't you reducing us to meaninglessness in the sense that, of course, we all think we're the center of the universe, if you like, and you are telling us we're not. That, I understand that. But aren't you going further than that and dissolving the whole point of us at all? I mean, this thing, you don't believe all this is an accident, I take it.
No, I think that the error is, the oversimplification is taking one plane of reality and investing it with some higher value than another. On one plane of reality, it is absolutely perfect law unfolding. No other than merely the unfolding of law. No more meaning than that. Merely a set of events evolving one from the other. On another level, on this level, there is choice, there is motive, there is intent, there is goal, there is purpose. And we play on this level with the purpose, and most of us take it very seriously. And part of awakening is that you start to do it from a different level. You do it out of a delight and a playfulness, even though it's all heavy and serious. You know, there's a different quality of the way you live life.
Well, now, the question that comes up at this moment, I can't resist it, to put it in an obvious modern metaphor, can you sell soap with it? I mean, what do you do? You live in the real world. Never mind about how many other worlds there are and the planes of illusion. I understand that. But we live in this world. We cross the street looking right and left. We go buy food in the grocery store.
Bernard, the question is how we live in the world, not whether we live in the world because we have taken incarnation here, because that's who you and I happen to be on this level of our evolution, that we end up on this plane together at this moment, knowing each other, at least on this plane. Right. But as Christ points out, one lives in the world but not of the world. And you slowly realize that that this is a form that's manifesting, and you dance with it. You wear it like your clothing. You honor it, you take care of it, you keep it clean and neat, and you find out how it harmoniously expresses itself.
But we have, or what do we have, you tell me, responsibilities to one another, very important ones too. Do we not have our fellow men, our fellow creatures?
Absolutely. And as you listen to hear why you have been incarnated and what function you have within the incarnation, see, this, Bernard, has a function. You as a cosmic, as God, is at play, as at rest, eternally. There's a part of you that is at rest, and then there is this form that has purpose and function. And you are constantly listening to hear what your function is. And the quieter you become, the more you hear your function is that of service, of relieving the suffering that exists, because you experience at one level of consciousness your identity with all other beings. See, behind, as we went through the changing of the channels, there is a place where you and I are one. And if you're suffering, I'm suffering, you see, ultimately. And there's where social responsibility comes in, finally.
Okay, so for lecture activity 2, I would like for you to just kind of respond to the video or react to the video. What did you like about what Ram Dass said? What did you dislike? Just kind of give me a sentence on each and let me know your general feeling for Ram Dass. And then also I'd like for you to tell me your beliefs on if there is a difference between spirituality and religion or not. And if you think there's a difference, what those differences are. So just give me 1 or 2 sentences on the difference between spirituality and religion, if there is one, and if you do think there is one, what those differences are. Okay, so now we're going to talk about experiencing and expressing yourself through your body. So through your facial expressions, through your physical health. So knowing your body is really essential to wellness. Our bodies are more than just a vehicle that carries us around. They are an expression of who we are. And so unexpressed emotions, they don't just disappear, they don't just die off. They re-manifest through body language. So even if you're not trying to express a certain emotion and you're trying to stuff it down, your body can express your inner self with your eyes. They can emote excitement or emptiness. Your mouth can send messages about how tense or at ease you are. Your neck can send messages about how angry or tense you are, like if your shoulders are up or you have your neck kind of crunched. And so swallowing your emotions or kind of trying to stuff them down has actually been shown to have the potential to take a physical toll on your body. And research shows that by not expressing your emotions in a healthy way, you can get physical ailments such as headaches, ulcers, digestive problems like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, neck and back pain, sleep disorders, and the list goes on. One of the keys to wellness is really being able to experience your body or have a strong bodily identity. And our book defines bodily identity as one's awareness of how they experience their body through movement and touch. Your body's a good gauge of if you are really living your life. In other words, how vital you are. So ask yourself, do I like how my body feels? One way to really get a good read on how your body is feeling physically and where you're holding tension is to get a massage. And some other things you can do to really try to kind of get in touch with how your body is feeling and getting a good gauge of kind of if you're living well or if you like how your body feels is to try and recognize as many senses as you can at once and try to do this often. Try to smell, taste, touch, hear, and see all at the exact same time. Also, try to notice what makes you tense in your environment. Honking, construction, heat, crowded spaces, and what makes you relaxed. Clean spaces, flowers, birds, food, soft noise, soft music. And one of the best ways to really get a strong bodily identity or to get to know your body better is to dance. So dance is a good way to own all of your body parts, and you can just like do it in the privacy of your own room with no one watching, or you can take a class, or you can go to the club, whatever you want to do. But it's the most popular technique at building a strong bodily identity. Because once you kind of own all of your parts, then you're like better connected to your body. But if you don't like to dance, you can play sports or anything, yoga, tai chi, Pilates, whatever makes you feel kind of more connected to your body and that you're moving your body and your muscles and your limbs all around and connecting kind of your mind or your spirit to the exercise. One of the things that's important for wellness is touch. But touch is, how much we touch each other, how affectionate we are towards one another is somewhat different between cultures. So actually in America, compared to other cultures, we don't like to touch each other very much. We have one of the furthest kinespheres, or comfort zones, which is about 3 feet. So we stand about 3 feet apart from each other when we're interacting. But we do know that touch is very important for humans, and it's essential during development when we're babies. And this is universal, it's across cultures. So, touch is specifically important for our physical, psychological, social, and intellectual development. Renee Spitz, who was an Austrian psychoanalyst and physician, studied children in an orphanage in the 1940s, and he had hypothesized that mortality rates in orphanages were not due to germs or poor conditions, but to the lack of love and affection that they were seeing in these kind of sterile, cold orphanages. So he decided to conduct a study, and he took orphans that were in hospitals and he compared them with orphans that were being raised in prisons because their mothers were incarcerated. And so kind of the idea was that in the orphans that were in the hospital, they would be in a clean environment, but there would be no affection. And the orphans that were being raised in the prisons would probably be around more germs and dirt, but the moms would be giving them more affection. And what he found very famously is that 37% of the orphans in the hospital died, and none from the prison died. So it wasn't the germs that was causing the mortality rates to be kind of high in orphanages. It was actually the lack of love and affection. So it's definitely something that we need as humans. And another very famous study that kind of looked at the importance of touch was Harlow's monkeys. So Harlow was a researcher, and he found some monkeys that had been taken from their moms at birth, and he studied them in a variety of ways. And one of the most famous ways was he gave them an option between food or comfort, and saw which one they went for the majority of the time. So we're gonna watch the video on Harlow's monkeys.
Conquest. The search for new knowledge about our universe, our world, and ourselves. This monkey is an orphan, separated from his mother since the day of his birth. Literally, his life hangs by a thread, a soft cheesecloth pad that is his only companion, his only comfort. Once a day, the pad is removed for cleaning.
This is the laboratory of psychologist Harry Harlow.
Troubled, distressed, permanently deprived.
He is studying monkeys to better understand human relationships.
He may die for want of love.
Harlow believes he can use science to study love. With a series of pioneering experiments, he explores territory where few scientists have ventured.
Harlow said that there was such a thing as a science of love, for example, that love, the kind of intimacy that characterized relationships between mothers and infants, although in his case he studied monkeys, could be the object of science, that you literally could move love into a laboratory, put it under a microscope.
Harlow is studying love because he believes it makes an indelible impact on a young life. The relationship between a mother and her child, what Harlow calls our earliest social environment, could hold the key to explaining behavior throughout life. Harlow designs a set of ingenious experiments. He raises a baby monkey, allowing it to choose between two surrogate mothers, a wire mother that feeds it, and a cloth mother that doesn't. A cloth mother that Harlow thinks might provide something else: comfort and love.
Here's baby 106, weaned on a wire mother. He's going to the wire mother.
But this infant quickly runs to the cloth mother, where he will stay for the next 18 hours cuddling. In Harlow's mind, choosing nurturing over sustenance. In another experiment, Harlow creates a fearful situation. Whom does the infant turn to now?
Let's find out what his reactions to his mother are when we frighten him. He's scared, all right. And he does what any child will do in a similar situation. He was running to his mother, to touch her, to drive away his fear.
To Harlow, there is something about the experience of comfort and love, even more than food, that seems crucial to all these monkeys. But what happens when the infant is raised alone, without any mother at all, wire or cloth? In this situation, the orphan monkey stays alone. He won't even go to the cloth mother when frightened, but retreats into his own world. Harlow believes he has shown how want of love can damage an infant for life, and he worries the same is true for people.
What comes through loud and clear in Harry Harlow's experiment was that early experience and the environment were crucial to the healthy development of the infant child, and that in a sense, if you messed up, if the right kind of maternal presence was not there during the critical years, then that infant might grow up to be an adult incapable of forming healthy relationships with other kinds of people.
Now we're going to talk about body image, and body image is defined as the way in which one perceives his or her body in terms of size, appearance, health, proportion of body parts, etc. So common concerns are weight, skin, and teeth. And the number one factor middle schoolers base their self-esteem on is physical appearance, which just lets us know that we start caring about our physical appearance at a very young age and put a lot of emphasis on it. Body image doesn't just affect female self-esteem and self-concept, but also males. And one of the things that is very impactful on our ideal body image is media and social media. And this is a little bit misleading because models and celebrities often have things like eating disorders, or they use drugs, or get plastic surgery, or their pictures are photoshopped, or in general they're just unhealthy, or maybe they're just lucky and that's their body type is their genetic makeup. But in most cases, the media is kind of giving people these very unrealistic ideas of what a body looks like. And research shows that people on social media are more concerned with their appearance than people not on social media. So the more time we spend looking at these images, the more, and these images that are celebrities or filtered or just falsified in some way, the more time we spend looking at them, the more we are concerned about body image and our physical appearance. Okay, so for lecture activity 3, I would like for you to tell me how media and or social media has played a role in the body image that you hold of yourself. Has the media or social media been helpful or hurtful in developing your body image? So give me 3 sentences on that at a minimum, and let me know the effects of the media on your own personal body image. Psychologists recommend that we determine our own perception of ideal rather than relying on media or society or even people close to us in relationships to help us, feel good about our body image or define what our body should look like. Other people telling you that you look great will really only be enjoyed for a few moments, so it's better if you can genuinely feel good about your body on your own. Another thing is that the attitude you adopt about your appearance is projected outward, and this affects how people treat you. For example, if you have a lack of confidence, this may come across as you not being personable. So, another thing to think about is what kinds of things do you say to yourself? Are you saying things to yourself about your body that are helpful or realistic? For example, many people say, I'd be happier if I had a better body, or people would like me more if I was attractive, I never look good enough, it's too much work to change my appearance. And some of those statements aren't helpful, some of those statements aren't realistic. And so you need to think about if your perceptions are accurate, or are they just a result of the media or experiences that you've had that were maybe negative, that you're kind of placing too much emphasis on. Another thing to keep in mind too is that we need to consider the context in which the ideal body image is being presented to us. So, for example, the ideal body image really depends on time, place, and culture. Marilyn Monroe's weight fluctuated from a size 12 to 16, and she was considered a sex symbol. Now sizes have changed, so that would equate to about a size 8, but that would still constitute a plus size model. In the 70s, this model that you see on your screen, Twiggy, was a size 00, and that was kind of the ideal body image. Nowadays, in the 2010s, it seems to be all about the big booty. Before that, in the 90s, it was all about the big breasts. So body image and what's attractive is constantly changing. In the 40s and 50s, products were sold to help women gain weight. Now there's products sold to help women lose weight or emphasize just certain parts of their body, their booties, their breasts, things like that. And then also culture is a major factor in what is considered the ideal body. For example, in countries where people are malnourished and don't have access to food resources, bigger women that would be considered obese in our culture are considered to be sexier because their weight is an indication that they have access to those food resources. Some countries value very long necks, some countries value very long earlobes, so it's really just dependent on when you live and where you live that ultimately determines what you perceive as the perfect body. Some people struggle with body image so much that they turn to eating disorders. And eating disorders are severe disturbances in eating behavior that are characterized by preoccupation with weight and unhealthy efforts to control weight, like starving yourself, which is something we see with anorexia, binging and purging, which is something we see with bulimia, which includes a cycle of eating enormous amounts of food at one sitting, and then using unhealthy methods like vomiting or laxatives to dispose of all that food. So let's watch a video on eating disorders.
You should be
that is it for Chapter 4. Please be sure to submit your lecture activities and also complete the other assignments associated with this chapter. And we shall see you for the next chapter. Have a great day.